Okay, so this is Left 4 Dead 2, but this is just background stuff. What we're going to be talking about today is the Halo art style, in particular the Forerunner art style, and how it's changed over the years to the point where now when you look at the 343 industry stuff that they started doing with Halo 4, you can easily tell what the difference is. So, starting off, going from Halo 1, the Forerunner art style was pretty simplistic, apart from the odd little bit of detail here and there in, say, like the corridors leading up to the map room in the Silent Cartographer, or just certain individual walls that Bungie would pick out to have a little bit more detail on. The Forerunner architecture in the original Halo was pretty simple. You know, there were a lot of just simplistic metal or shiny metal walls, and then the odd bits were highlighted with extra detail to give it that sort of ancient, alien, mysterious look to it. Then go to Halo 2, and because they wanted to establish the look a little bit more, you have a lot of more detail. All the textures make everything look as though it's made up of individual metal plates and things. It just looks a lot more involved in terms of how much detail is going on, because there is tons of detail in Halo 2's textures, and that would carry over to Halo 3, because with Halo 3, that's where you got the most detail, and I feel like by the time we got to Halo 3, seeing that amount of detail fleshed out is kind of what everyone remembers the Forerunners being. You know, there were a lot of rooms that felt like they had grandeur, or, you know, they felt really awesome in terms of the amount of detail that was involved, and it gave you this sense of, okay, this race was so technologically advanced that they were able to make these very intricate details in the metal work, and everything looked fantastic. And then we come to 343's version, and you've got to remember, this is kind of inspired by the book lore. So, when you read some of the books, in particular, the one that started all of this off was Halo Cryptum, from what I remember. In Cryptum, it details how the Didax ship assembles itself out of pieces of metal, and this is really what 343 have been going for, this sort of this design where the metal itself looks like it could shape up out of nowhere, as if it could form or fall apart at any point in time. And that's really why they have the sort of Forerunner hologram slash energy running through some of the weapons as well. It gives off the same impression that this is all held together by energy, and that it's almost like magic. You know, it can appear out of thin air, create different items or things that the Forerunner need, whether it be ships or structures or things like that. And then when you look at the actual overall surface detail, it is very lacking compared to the previous Halos. It's even more lacking compared to Halo 1. See, what they've done is they've tried to pull off a similar amount of detail, but rather than doing it all through the texture, they've done it in 3D. But they can't get that same level of detail in 3D because of the polygon counts, because otherwise the polygon counts would be through the roof, and obviously they have to balance the effects, the characters, the weapons, and the vehicles on screen at the same time, which is a lot of polygons, especially with newer games that can use 100,000 polygons and up for one character, depending on the title. So what you end up having is very simplistic shapes made out of extruded models, or rather very simplistic shapes made up in the metalwork, and these are detailed all over the place, and as other YouTubers have said, they are done in such a way that it makes everything look really, not exactly detailed, but it just makes everything look very confusing. They've done it all over the place without any sort of thought into where all of this should go or how it should properly look. Instead, it's just kind of like, okay, we'll try and mimic the style, but we'll also make it our own as well. And another reason is because when you're looking at the surface detail, like I was saying before, it just seems barren. It's because they tried to get across this almost like clean, godly looking style in Halo 4, and then that continued obviously to Halo 5. They tried to make the Forerunners, instead of, like, the first game, everything looked very mysterious. You know, you had holograms and intricate patterns, and sure enough, it was very, not exactly lackluster, but there wasn't lots of it, you know. It was, like I said, very minimalistic, so you'd find key areas would have details, maybe the flooring would have a tileable texture that looked quite detailed, but apart from that, it was a lot of beveled edges with simple textures on them to make up for it. And we kind of see this coming back in Halo 4, in which they have very simple textures and a very clean look to everything, and it just looks out of place considering in Halo 3, or by the time we got to Halo 3, the Forerunner's style was established. I don't know whether it was just because we were on the Ark, but it was established as being this style that was very old, very detailed, to show off the elaborate details of the Forerunner, how they could make things and how intricate they could make them. But also it was very sand coloured. You know, there wasn't much greys in Halo 3. It was all pretty much to match the Chief's armor from the original presentation video at E3, which was kind of sand coloured, and everything took on that kind of theme because the Ark is full of sand, which it makes sense. But going back to the Halo 4 and Halo 5, honestly, coming out of Halo 3, the one thing that should have been fixed is keeping the amount of detail in the actual surfaces instead of getting rid of it, and just making the colour different, because the colour could have easily just been the standard grey that 343 seems so happy with doing, but not as clean, because the cleanliness is the one thing that stands out. It's kind of like the rest of Halo 4 and Halo 5's art style. Everything looks too clean and almost like it's made out of not metal but plastic. A lot of the things start looking like that, including some of the Spartans in Halo 5 and the Spartan armor. So what you end up having is stuff that looks more like the Boomco toy line than actual items made out of specific materials, you know, like for instance different types of metal, which is a shame. There is also a lack of holograms in Halo 5 and Halo 4, specifically the same ones that we got in Halo 1, 2 and 3, because with the art style for the Forerunner in Halo 1, 2 and 3, the holograms that were there to not just highlight specific details like control panels and things, they also had the Reclaimer symbols in and everything, and they kind of give life to an otherwise drab set of walls that would just be grey. Unlike with Halo 4 and Halo 5, where they sought to use this to highlight almost every single surface imaginable, where you have like blue or orange energy running through everything. Now, some people have said it might be because, okay, there's two sets of Forerunner casts. There's the Builders and there's the Warrior Servants. But I actually don't believe that, because it just seems weird how you would change an entire aesthetic just based on one cast. I can understand why people have said that, but it just seems weird in terms of, like, for instance, different races of humans don't just suddenly change the style or aesthetics of things because they're a different race. Not that dramatically anyway. You have certain religious buildings that are different, but overall the structure of normal human buildings tends to be the same. So to compare it, it should not be that drastic for the Forerunner in Halo 4 and Halo 5. So going into Halo 6, I think the best thing they could do would be to try and emulate the Halo 3 style a little bit more, in which there's a lot of surface details. and go back to making the Forerunners more of a mystery. See, that's the only other thing that I have a problem with the 343 games, is that the Forerunner became less of a mystery and more of just an in-your-face bad guy, a replacement for the Flood or the Covenant, because we couldn't use them as bad guys anymore. You know, we couldn't use them as threats because we'd already beat the Covenant, we'd taken out the Prophets, and we'd also saved mankind from the Flood. So, when you can't have any enemies like that, it would have been interesting to have, like, another insurrection or something, or some uprising of different colonies that don't agree with the UNSC still. That would have been, I think, more of an inevitable thing to go over. But when it comes to the Forerunners, getting back on topic, the Forerunners were, in Bungie's games, always a mystery. You never saw them. And that's why all these structures had these details in, to make up for the lack of them. It was supposed to show their advancement over everyone else. You have the humans that have the very blocky designs for the vehicles and everything, that have military colours and are based on real military stuff, you know, with all the other different things that people have drawn conclusions with, which is like the medals and things for multiplayer. The Halo human aesthetic or design choices were made to have the human tech be very blocky and very almost not realistic, but just to differentiate them from the other race, which was the Covenant. And the way this was done is that like I said, the humans were blocky and the Covenant were rounded. The difference being that humans used more sort of greyish, dark greens, military style colours, and the Covenant used primarily pinks and purples in all of the technology. So we see that in, say, the inside of the ship in Halo 1, or in High Charity in Halo 2 and Halo 3. There's a lot of purples and pinks and the odd bit of dark blue that make up Covenant architecture, so you can easily tell what's what. But when you come to Forerunner, the thing that always made Forerunner was that mysterious kind of dirt-ridden architecture that was old, had a lot of detail in it, and you never actually knew who had made it. You could never see them, but you knew their influence was there. You knew they had to be some sort of, not threat, but major power in the galaxy to be able to detail things like this, to be able to build structures with such intricate detail, as well as the fact that everything that the Forerunners made had bevels. There are a lot of bevels in Forerunner designs, so when you look at like a building or a structure, say for instance on Death Island or on Valhalla on Halo 3, you'll notice that the actual structure for the bases themselves, the main tower is almost like a triangle or an L shape, but the edges of it are beveled inwards, or I mean, sorry, yeah, beveled inwards to make it look as though it's got an extra angled shape to it, and then the rest of the design is comprised of these detailed surfaces that make everything look a lot more technologically advanced than it should be, because otherwise it's just simple shapes. Because that's basically what the Forerunner designs are, simple shapes made with, and that is made up for with these detailed textures, compared to Halo 4 and Halo 5, where everything is a little bit more complicated with the shapes, but the textures are a lot more simplified, and it's obvious. And like I said before, they ditched the dirt-ridden look to give it this godly style cleanliness look, and I suppose that kind of works in the fact that they were trying to make the Forerunner out to be some sort of god to the Covenant, at least, because of the way the Covenant treat them. But at the same time, I think it was done too drastically. Stuff needs to have wear and tear on it. It needs to have dirt on it. It needs to have grime to show years of it being neglected. You know, it's not gonna be pristine after so many hundreds of thousands of years, or how many thousands of years we were into the Forerunner war with the flood, and then the facilities have been left dormant. It seems like they would be all covered in massive amounts of dust and dirt at this point, and then left for you. So when you come to explore them, everything is very dirty, you know, not clean at all. So it gives you that sort of, that sense of wonder, you know, you're wondering what happened here, how long has this stuff been here, and who were the people that made it, rather than being in your face with the whole thing of surprise, it's the Forerunner, they look like this, they have you know, the warrior cast that look like this when it comes to like the knights and things. Honestly, I don't think they should have been brought in as an enemy because of the way that everything has been handled. So yeah, that's just my little rant slash explanation of why I don't think Forerunner architecture has worked overall in the newer games, and what can be done to more or less fix it in the next game, because the next game has to be good. If it's not, then the Xbox will fail, because there's a quote online that I've seen from a magazine that basically said, if we don't know what we're doing with Halo, we don't know what we're doing with Xbox, because the Xbox is basically, has always been reliant on Halo to sell consoles and units and to stay alive. Halo is the one thing that is marketed to everyone when they get an Xbox, and that everyone expects to be a decent game with a decent story. But when it's not, that's when you start seeing low sales numbers or people not bothering with the franchise anymore because they're not sure which way it's going. They're unsure of whether the next title is going to be good, and that ruins everything, and overall that leaves them with less money, you know. And when it comes to business, I would love them to have all the money that they can so they can develop good Halo games again. Anyway, till next time.